Well, June, thank you so much for having us out to your house.
It's a pleasure, darling.
Fantastic. We're just going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about your life and just want to know about you. I mean, we know each other, but this is a wonderful way to really get to know you. So why don't you tell me, where were you born?
I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, really?
My mother was born in Northampton, Massachusetts, but we three kids were born in Springfield. My dad came from Meriden, Connecticut. My great-great-grandmother came from Canada. She was a Mohawk Indian. I was 16th Mohawk. But anyway, they came down from New York and then settled in Massachusetts.
Oh, so you're an East Coast kid.
I'm an East Coast kid.
And did you grow up on the East Coast and then come out to California, or tell me about your early life?
Well, my father was an engineer. My mother was a singer and a pianist. And they just decided to come to California. I was 17 years old. I had just graduated from high school. And we came out here, and my dad started working out here. And when I was 6 years old, I told my mother and father I wanted to be an actress. And they were most supportive of me. I think most parents should be, but mine really were. And so they gave me what they called at that time elocution lessons. And finally, I did radio when I was 12 years old. My teacher had a radio show. And finally she said, you know, I can't teach you anymore. It sounds immodest, but I don't mean it to be. She said, you're better than I am. It's just that I could do more things. I could change my voice, and she couldn't.
So you had it in you from the start.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let's backtrack a little bit. That's wonderful how you got into this. At 6 years old, you knew you wanted to be an actress. And what was it that made you know about an actress? Was it seeing movies, or was it hearing the radio? What exactly was it that got you there?
My mother and father were very esoteric people.
Mm-hmm.
They would take us to the operas, to stage shows, to the movies. And I would come home and impersonate all these people. And I even barked at the dogs, and when they barked back, I knew that I was an actress.
Did you have any personal favorites as a youngster? Was there any, like Shirley Temple or anybody that was a big character in your life?
Not really. I sort of invented my own after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I was an omnivorous reader. I still am, and so are my family members. And so I read a lot of the classics.
Mm-hmm.
I became Mrs. Malaprop. I became, I think the old lady that I do, Granny now, you know. I had read James M. Barrie's The Old Woman Shows Her Medals. And I would always take speeches out and memorize them.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were exposed to the arts at an early age, and
yes.
this really was the foundation for what became your life. And you're still living it today.
Yeah, still working.
So you started doing a radio show at 12. And were you nervous the first time you performed?
No.
No. It was just a natural progression.
I was always very modest.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in school, I was almost, I wouldn't say that I was antisocial, because I had a lot of friends, but I would rather have read and impersonated and do what I wanted to do. So, but anyway, radio was just all there was, except for stage, you know, and operas and so forth, and the movies.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there was no television, of course.
No, but that's I think that probably helped in many ways, because you, like you said, you read those
started in
books and
radio.
your imagination, and that was the fun of radio, of course, and still is. If you listen to the characters, you paint a picture in your mind of who they are,
And you know, when we did radio, you pick up a script and you read it and you do it live.
Mm-hmm.
There was no tape.
Great training.
It was wonderful, and I think this is what makes a good voiceover, because you're so cognizant of what words mean. instead of just reading them.
And that's a very important aspect of being a performer, is knowing what the words mean.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's why you have the shading, the upper, the lower tones, and you forget commas, and you forget all the periods or questions. You just become versatile in reading a line in a natural manner. That's all.
Mm-hmm. So you're doing the radio, and your family says we're going to move to California, and so you've just got out of high school, and you come out to California, which must have been quite a culture shock, coming from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yes, sunshine all the time. And
Yes.
It was so cold in Massachusetts. Oh my Lord! In the winters, and in the summer it was hot. But it was very good training. When I went to high school, I studied Latin. I translated Julius Caesar from Latin into English.
Oh.
I studied French. I studied geometry, algebra, biology, chemistry. And when we came out here, I appeared at the Pasadena Community Playhouse.
Really?
Yes. I can't remember the lady's name. I just remember her first name. Her name was Babette. And she said, well, you know, someday you're going to be a very famous actress. And I said, oh, sure, you know, because this is all I wanted to do anyway, but you never know if you're going to be successful or not.
Sure, luck has a lot to do with
Especially
it.
in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But I was also writing at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to a radio station, KFBD. I don't think it's still in existence.
Gee, I don't know.
I have no idea. But anyway, I went to them and said, I'd like to do a children's program. And I wrote children's stories. I was on about 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
It went through the schools. The people loved it. I was 18, 19, 20 years old.
And you wrote, and then you performed all the
Yes.
parts yourself.
Yep, it was a 15-minute show.
Wow. So you were a one-girl show.
I was a one-girl show. And as a matter of fact, with the earthquake here a few years ago, I didn't know where my scripts were. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And a young man who was taking care of my house and my dog while I was in Europe said, you know, boxes with scripts are falling down. And I thought they were my husband's because my husband was a screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
But they were my Lady Make-Believe scripts.
Oh, my goodness.
And I recorded 6. Ted Turner sent me $10,000. He was going to record them. But then AOL and Warner's bought Turner. So anything Turner wanted, they turned it down. So I called the attorneys and I said, I'd like them back. He said, you want to send the $10,000 back? And I said, no, I've already paid taxes on them. So he said, you're going to have to wait for the full 3 years. So I got them back.
Oh, congratulations.
I recorded 5 different ones. They're going to be out on CDs in September of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Of stories that I wrote when I was 18, 19 years old.
I was going to say, and isn't that ironic how times have changed? When you're 18 or 19, you're able to go to a radio station and you got the airtime immediately and you proved your mettle.
Yeah.
And today, where you are June Foray with this great portfolio of work, you have to
It's amazing.
you're put in turnaround because of corporate mergers. But that's getting off the track.
Yeah.
So you're doing the radio, and obviously you're quite successful at this. And this is heady stuff for an 18, 19-year-old if you think about it. But
I think so.
it's not going to your head. You're just doing what
No.
you know you are supposed to do.
I thought of going to college, and I thought, what more can I learn?
Mm-hmm.
I've read all the classics, studied Latin, French, German. You know.
You knew what you wanted to do.
Well, in Massachusetts, the high schools at that time were like colleges.
I found the same thing to be true, having been an East Coast kid. When we relocated out here in 1973, I went from junior high school in the East Coast to the West Coast, and it was like 3-grade difference. I couldn't
I
believe
know.
it was just so different.
It's
But
amazing.
that's the difference between the coasts, I guess. That really is. It's still true.
Yeah.
So you're doing the radio, and you're obviously going to have a showbiz career. So what's the next step for June Foray? What happens next?
Well, I was doing the radio shows, and then I hired, well, I started to write In 1944, when I was still very young, I had the audacity to call the Office of Civilian Defense and say, I'm a good writer, hire me. And so in 1944, they hired me, and I wrote scripts for the Office of Civilian Defense.
So you did your part for the war effort.
And Ray Bradbury, I just found out that Ray was doing it at the same time for Joe Michike. I didn't know that until I saw Ray at Chuck Jones' 80th birthday party, and we were talking about our backgrounds, and he said that he wrote war drama at the same time that I did.
Isn't that
amazing?
Something? Oh, what? It is amazing. It really is.
Strange coincidence.
Small world. Small
It
world.
is.
It really is. So you're doing this thing in 1944, and you're doing your part for the war effort, and obviously you must be getting exposure. People must be becoming familiar with you and your talents. So what happens
So
next?
there were a few actors whom I knew about, actors who were already busy in radio, and they said, gee, why don't you do national radio? And I said, well, I don't know how to do it, because I was a kid just starting out. And they introduced me to various advertising agencies, and they'd tell me where there was an audition. And I just started doing radio, and that's how I met my husband.
Ah, and he was the screenwriter, and so was he writing radio programs at the time?
Yes.
And radio was the big thing.
He wrote the Smileman McConnell Show.
Wow.
And he hired me for that.
Ah.
And I was married to somebody else, and he was married to somebody else, and we were married 10 years later.
No kidding.
Yeah. That wild.
Again, small world. I mean, go
Yeah.
figure. So you're doing radio programs, and I guess it's just like anything else. You would audition for a role, and you'd get it, and you'd do it. And did you hire on with an agency at that time? Did you have representation, or were you just
No.
representing yourself?
Yeah, nobody had an agent then, really.
It was pretty much just.
In radio, nobody had an agent. I guess when they worked in pictures, they did.
Okay.
But I didn't.
No. So you're doing radio stuff, and then how do you get into animation? How does that happen?
I was put under contract to Capitol Records. By this time, I did have an agent.
Uh-huh.
And he put Stan Freeberg and me and Mel Blanc and Dawes Butler under contract to Capitol Records. And Alan Livingston was the A&R man there. And Alan would write original things, and then he would write Disney, some of the shorts or features, and reduce them for records. So I guess Disney heard me doing witches and animals and little girls and boys and princesses, and they hired me to do Lucifer the Cat in Cinderella. That was the first animated thing I ever did.
So that was your big break in animation. And
then I did so many shorts.
did you meet Walt?
I never met Walt.
No way, huh? Who did you work with when you were at Disney?